St. John's Metropolitan Community Church in Raleigh, North Carolina. And on behalf of the entire Governing Board, we would like to welcome you to this Governing Board webinar. Before we get started, we'd like to lift one of our Governing Board members up in prayer, Paul Wyden, who is unable to attend this webinar tonight. Paul, please know that you are in our thoughts and prayers, and please, we welcome you to a speedy recovery. Today we're going to start with the agenda. Today's agenda will include the welcome and ground rules, opening prayer, overview of thoughts. We'll also review the finance statement. From there, we will go through and do a staffing update. We'll continue and do an overview of the process for questions sent out. We'll do answers to questions arising about the webinar. We'll do a thank you, and then a final closing. Before we get started, we would like to do a couple of ground rules. First of all, we are so glad that you are here. Next, we would like for you to dictate you to where you can write your questions. Next, the webinar is being digitally recorded, and the chat box will not be checked for questions. Please be respectful of each other and share the time with everyone that's on this webinar. Now, please prepare your hearts and your minds as Claire Collins leads us in prayer.
Good evening, everyone, or whatever time it is in your time zone. I'm Claire Coughlin, member of the Governing Board. My home church is Divine Peace Metropolitan Community Church in Waterford, Michigan, USA. Please join me in prayer. Loving God, we thank you for sending your Holy Spirit to be with us, to live in us, and to guide us into the way of peace and truth. We pray that you would grant us the spirit of wisdom and unity so that we may be one. Enable all that are a part of the body of Christ to walk in a way worthy of the calling, to live and work together in love. Use us individually and collectively to reflect the love of God. Teach us how to live in unity and fellowship with one another, and lead us into the path of peace. Teach us how to love one another as Christ loves us. Help us to be slow to anger and quick to forgive as we abide in you and you in us. We thank you for all that you have done and continue to do as we work together as MCC. Amen. And now Reverend Cecilia, our moderator, will share her thoughts about the first months of her tenure as our moderator.
Thank you, Claire. Hello, everyone. It's fantastic to see how many people are already attending this webinar. And I want to say thank you to all our Governing Board members who work so hard every day to serve you. One of the questions that we were asked was why we have the webinar at the time that we're having. I'm in Melbourne at the moment. It's coming up to 9:05 on Friday morning. Some of you are still on Thursday evening. Some of you on Thursday night or in the wee small hours of Friday. All our Governing Board members are volunteers, and they have day jobs as well as the work that they do on the Governing Board. So one of the issues for us in terms of timing is just when can people get out of their day jobs in order to be on these webinars. So I'd like to say thank you to all the Governing Board for being present, for everything that you do, and thank you to everyone who's on the webinar today, and to our great staff, Mike and Karma, who are supporting us in the background. It's been an amazing first 6 months for us all. As you might imagine, our major focus has been on the finances, and Chad, the Treasurer, will be giving a good update about that. and the work of the Finance Committee, which many of you may not be aware of. It's been fantastic to see the generosity of individuals and of churches to continue the work of MCC and the faith that you have in MCC. And thinking about the future of MCC, who do we want to be? Who is God calling us to be? And we're focusing on this word community because that is one of our great strengths. When Troy Perry first listened for the voice of God in naming us as a denomination, we have Metropolitan Community Church. Community is our middle name, and one of the ways that we want to build and grow MCC is to improve the way we communicate with each other and the way that we appear as MCC around the world, because what happens and what works in one country or in one city in one country isn't going to be the same way to resource and serve people as somewhere else in the world. And so over the next year or two, we want to expand the different ways that we are MCC. And so for this first 6 months, a lot of what I've been doing is just listening to voices around the world to hear what MCC looks like around the world and what's needed. So we've been looking at our finances, we've been looking at our staffing structure, and James will be talking about that and the changes that we've made, and as we continue to develop our staffing structure, the possibilities that we have for serving you through our staff. And so we have looked in the first 6 months about these very basic, very important things, our finances, our staffing structure, and this coming year we're going to be looking at those bigger questions. Who is God calling us to be? What is God calling us to do? What is our shared vision for the future of MCC? Because as moderator, I have part of the vision. I certainly don't have all of it. The elders have some of the vision, the governing board, the staff, and you have the vision for what we are called to be as MCC. So in this next 12 months, that's what we're going to be focusing on, listening to what God is calling each one of us to be, and to weave that together into a common vision, a common purpose, and a common way forward. So it's been a very exciting first few months. I think it's fair to say for all of us, it's been a steep learning curve. There's so much that the governing board and I have been learning about and learning how to work together, and it's been an exciting and productive time. So I'm very grateful to them, I'm very grateful to you, and I look forward to seeing more of your questions in the question box to the left of your screens, and answering the questions that have already been sent in. So that's all from me for now. I'm just going to hand you over to Chad Hobbs, who is our treasurer. Thank you, Chad.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. We're so glad that you can join us tonight, or as Claire said, wherever you might be in the world. All right, so Cecilia mentioned that we have a finance committee, and a lot of people might not be aware of this. So the finance committee is appointed by the governing board, and myself as the treasurer, I am the chair of the finance committee. We meet once a month, and we schedule it for an hour, but we are so detailed about going through the finances. Cecilia can attest that we're normally a 2-hour meeting every month, because it's just a really bright group of people that I just want you to have assurance that they are really digging through our finances to make sure everything is in order on our finances for us. So we are, and as an extra layer of transparency, we have also initiated that a non-governing board member of the finance committee takes notes at each of our finance meetings and sends those out to the finance team and the governing board in a PDF version, which means it can't be edited. And that's just to add a layer of transparency to make sure that everything that was agreed on by the Finance Committee, that there's a record of that cannot be altered. So we felt that was important to add that layer of transparency in there. So on the slide, you can see the, most of you can see, I will do a quick read through of who's on the Finance Committee. Myself as the treasurer, and I apologize, I forgot to say I'm in Tampa, Florida, and my home church is MCC Tampa. Doug Berger, who is from Church of the Trinity, MCC in Sarasota, Florida. Kathy Campbell-Heroux, who is with King of Peace MCC in St. Petersburg, Florida. Reverend Marsha Warren with MCC San Antonio in San Antonio, Texas. Tammy Irwin, who's on our MCC staff and is our accounting and finance coordinator in Wichita Falls, Texas. Reverend Dr. Karma Amos, who is also on MCC staff. She's the fundraising development and assessments coordinator, team lead for the resource development, and she's in Lewes, Delaware. Reverend Maria Alfred Harkey, she's on the MCC governing board, and she also serves as the assistant treasurer, and she's in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. And finally, Reverend Elder Cecilia Eggleston, of course, is our moderator in Bristol, United Kingdom. So I want to personally thank the Finance Committee. I can't express to you what a great group of people this is, and how much of a help they are, and the service they give to our denomination. And I'd also just like to give a thank you to Dr. David Williams, who through the end of the year was also part of the finance team. His service on the finance team did end at the end of the year, but he did some great contributions to the finance team, and of course was the outgoing chair prior to me as our outgoing treasurer as well. So a huge thank you to David. All right, so our finance team meeting was actually this afternoon. So this is hot off the presses from literally a couple of hours ago. You guys are seeing this before it's been published to anyone. And I know it's hard to see on this screen, so forgive me if you see me looking a little to my right or left, because I have another computer screen that I'm going to be reading from, because it's hard for me to read it on this screen too. So as you know, when this governing board started, we committed to producing a financial snapshot, which is what you're seeing here, and we've been doing that every month. We just wanted to give something that's a quick and simple view of our finances from month to month and year to date. So this shows us through December. So for our end of the year, I won't read each of the numbers to you. I know you guys will see this when we post it officially and send it out in our governing board communication, as we do every month. But one thing I wanted to point out, you will see the total net income for the year is just over 272,000. I just wanted to point out that that is reflective of both our operating income and our designated income. So that's going to include things like the Lilly grant and other designated accounts that we can't touch for general operating, but it's still showing there. So my point being is, while we are doing, we're in a much better place financially than we were a year ago or even 6 months ago with changes that we've made. I don't want people to walk away thinking that we have $300,000 of operating income at the end of the year. So I wanted to point out that that is reflective of both restricted and operating income, designated, excuse me. All right. And then as per usual, I've got footnotes at the bottom that just explain some significant areas. One of the big things that we've tackled over the last few months that Cecilia and I have been intimately involved in is resolving our bill with the Hilton Hotel from the General Conference, and I pointed out last month that we had finally come to a final agreement on that. So I just reiterated that here, that in December we show a $40,000 expense, which is reflective of the balance of the Hilton bill. We paid $20,000 of that in December, leaving a $20,000 balance, which is recognized as an expense in the month of December. However, per the agreement I outlined last month, we will make $4,000 or $5,000 quarterly payments in 2020 to satisfy that bill. And then I pointed out as well, I won't read all of these because you guys will be able to look at this, but the last one in December, we paid off our 2016 audit. That expense was just over $13,000, so you'll see that on the more detailed financials, so I wanted to point that out. Just a reminder that the money to pay for that had already been previously earmarked from the 2018 end of year finance committee appeal. So that is now paid for in full and completed. And we will be posting the results of that audit on the website shortly, but I'll give you a little spoiler alert. We passed and the results were quite good, so that's very good to know. And 2017 and 2018 audits are already in progress, so we are trying to be transparent and fiscally responsible and make sure all of our audits are up to date. And we thank the finance team that did the end of the year appeal last year that helped us get those audits going that we were behind on. All right. And on behalf of the governing board and staff and the finance committee, we just want to really thank you for your generous contributions to MCC. Without your generosity, it would not be possible for MCC to live out our unique call in the world, and that's so vital for us to be able to do that. I also want to thank our moderator circle, our folks that give to the moderator circle. That is a tremendous asset and stream of income for us, and we thank you for that. And if you would like information, if you're not currently a moderator circle, part of the moderator circle donating, and you'd like information on that, feel free to reach out to myself or Marina Laws on staff, and we will be happy to get you information and explain to you how that works and get you set up. The staff, governing board, and finance team also did and council of elders, excuse me, also did a end of the year giving campaign this year. And I would like to thank the folks that have generously given to that. We have, through the end of December, we've raised over $6,300 through that end of the year campaign. So thank you very much for that. We so appreciate your generosity. Okay. And next, I just wanted to give a huge thank you to the churches that are completing their assessment reports accurately and on time. Making your assessment payments in a timely manner allows MCC to continue to do God's work and meet our financial obligations. So we thank you for that. And another spoiler alert, between our staff and our finance committee, we are working on putting together some videos on some quick training on those assessment reports for those that might need some help with that. So stay tuned for that. And we're also going to be doing some communications and kicking off a campaign to increase churches that pay their assessments online, which just saves a huge overhead for the denomination, from not having to do mail and deposit checks and all that fun stuff that just plus overhead money. So stay tuned for that campaign as well. And lastly, I'd just like to say, following up on the contributions of the previous governing board, we've made great strides in getting the denomination finances in order and creating a sustainable structure. Finances are a constant struggle that we work on, and while we're not quite where we'd like to be yet, we are in a much better space than we were 6 months ago. So we will continue to work to make sure that your generosity and your money is being managed wisely and that we're able to make an impact in the world with that money. So I will now hand it over to James Chavis, who is going to talk about staffing.
Thank you, Chad, and hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us wherever you may be. I am James Chavis, and I am in San Antonio, Texas. My home church is MCC of San Antonio, and I certainly won't take up a lot of time. We'll just talk about staffing just a little bit. We'll just look at this beautiful chart that our moderator created. She worked very hard on it. And so we'll just go through this very briefly. Back in November, we did have a posting that was sent out on behalf of the governing board and that talked about the different areas. So I'm just going to I just pulled some highlights from that I wanted to remind you of. And so with this new staffing structure, there were two goals that we had in mind for it. One of them was for us to be financially sustainable in managing our staff structure. And then two was being able to respond to the needs of our local churches and our church leaders, both present and future. It was also important for us to be clear and realistic about what staff can do and what support would be better provided through networks and by our local churches working with each other. And so that was important as we were talking about what this looked like and how we were going to move forward. So there were two basic principles that came out of that. One of them was to encourage a culture of sufficiency and generosity. The other was to ensure that diversity and inclusion were embedded, and measured in the work that was done. And so these two things were very, very important. And our moderator, Cecilia, had said that, and it was so important that I felt it was important for us to say it tonight. And it's important for all of us to really receive this. God has given us everything that we need. MCC has enough. MCC is enough. So when we work together, we create amazing ways of answering God's call. Just take a moment and just receive that. MCC has enough. MCC is enough. Just receive that. So think about what it is that we can do in this moment with what we have. How can we find ways of sharing it with the ideas that we have around the world? And then what can we learn from each other? And so then we move on and we talk about diversity and inclusion. When we look at us, when we get together at General Conference and you see all these different people, we are an amazing group of people. And so it's important for us to have a staff that also reflects that. And so when we're looking at folks who can really represent us in different ways and in different countries, it's important that we also have common thoughts, ideas, and things of that nature that are important for MCC and around the world. And so when we look at the two focus areas that we wanted to look at were community development and resource development. And so community development, which is the top area of the graph there. So you've got your on the right side your community building team, and then on the left on the left side is your community building team, and the right side is your leadership development team. People need connection, and people need a place to belong. And so strong communities need healthy, trained and empowered leaders. And so both lay and clergy, so our local congregations and church leaders have a wealth of experience and expertise, and we have to tap into that. And so the networks are an excellent way of furthering that and sharing best practices and learning from each other. And so our community development team lead is the Reverend Elder Hector Gutierrez. And so he has these two teams that are under his leadership, and in working with our emerging church and MCC communities coordinator, Reverend Wanda Floyd, and then of course our conference and events coordinator, Reverend Lauren Bennett, and then our church support and development coordinator, which is a position that is currently advertised, and we're looking for someone there. But the Reverend Cristiano Valerio is still working with us, who is still working with our communities in the Ibero-America. So if you have any matters that are relating to church support and development in that column, then you'll reach out to Reverend Elder Hector. On the leadership side, on the right-hand side, if you have any questions there, you'll continue to reach out to Reverend Elder Hector as we are continuing to seek out, and these are open positions for the vocational leadership coordinator and the laity development diversity inclusion coordinator, which are currently open positions. And so if you need any help with those matters, then you'll reach out to Hector. There are some folks that are international who can assist as well in different areas. Just as an FYI, we do have the Reverend John Fowler, who is in Australia and New Zealand, the Reverend Maxwell, and if I mess this up, don't hate me. The Reverend Maxwell Ray, I think, in MCC in Europe, the Reverend Sandro Aurelio, for those matters and speaking in Portuguese and in Southern America, and the Reverend Victor Bracuto, for clergy-related matters for those speaking in Spanish. So if you need assistance there, and we will repost these if we need to, so that we know that there is support for all of our folks around the world. For resource development, in the lower two boxes, on the left-hand side we have our fundraising team, and then on the right-hand side we have our communications team. This team is led by the Reverend Dr. Karma Amos, and she's responsible for managing both of these teams. And this was important because we wanted to have an excellent group of folks to manage not only the Department of Giving, but we also wanted to work on global ministries and things of that nature, and bring it all into one. And so Reverend Dr. Karma was the one chosen to do that. We felt that she was the best one for that role, and she's doing an amazing job, and she hit the ground running. So thank you very much, Reverend Karma, for all the hard work that you are doing, and your team. So on Karma's team are fundraising and development assessment coordinator is Reverend Dr. Karma. The accounting and finance coordinator is Tammy Irwin. The assessment and administrator part-time is Miss Marina Laws. Under the resource development communications team, we have Mr. Mike Hazy, who is handling IT and website and database work. Our administrative assistant, Janine McCarthy. And then our new internal communications coordinator, who's recently announced, the Reverend Colleen Dara, is now joined our team. So we are grateful for all of them. And then we are still currently looking for a social media and external communications coordinator at this time. So if you have any matters regarding resource development, please contact the Reverend Reverend Dr. Karma Amos. And then, of course, our moderator's office, led by the Reverend Elder Cecilia Eggleston, and then her assistant, her confidential executive assistant is Marina Laws, if you need any assistance there. And we certainly want to thank all of our staff who still has the willingness to serve with us, because it's not always easy. Pardon me. It's not always easy to go through changes like this. It's never easy to go through changes like this, especially when it's a real organizational change where it's new people, new this, new that, new everything, and it's not always easy. But we are grateful because we have people who are faithful. Faithful not only to what we do, but they're faithful to the mission that we have. And so we couldn't be more grateful to everyone. And we thank you. And if you have any questions, please email us here at the governing board. And if you have any questions tonight, you can still put some questions in at the left of your screen. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Marie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Reverend Marie Alford Harkey. I'm in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. I'm the senior pastor of MCC of the Palm Beaches here in the USA. Just want to give you a brief overview of the process that we went through in collecting the questions that were submitted in advance. We sent out requests for questions that people would like to have answered, and we received several, which will be answered by the governing board in the next few slides. They were given to various governing board members to answer and to present. And as those questions are answered, if the responses generate more questions, please put those in the box to the far left. And a reminder that anytime you're asking questions in that box tonight, to please do one question at a time with a single response that's needed, because we're trying to make sure that everybody who asks a question gets a chance to hear an answer. So if there's a multiple component question, we will probably just prioritize the first one of that, so that everyone who asks a question maybe can get their question answered. And with that, I will pass you all to, I think this is Diane? Yeah.
Welcome. I'm Diane Fisher. I'm the pastor of MCC Rehoboth in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, USA. And I also hail from Canada, just so I can get it in there. The first question was about how about a retirement plan for clergy and staff? And that's quite a big question. But what I could say was that clergy living in the United States, MCC has a modest pension plan. After 25 years of service, or when a clergy person reaches the age of 65, or they are disabled in some way, need a medical leave, they are eligible to receive the funds, which are based on a formula, the number of years that you've worked, and the experience, and a flat rate. And all the churches in the United States contribute to this plan. MCC staff who are clergy and are members of MCC in the United States are a part of that pension plan as well. Additionally, our staff are eligible for matching contribution of up to 3%, which goes into a 403B in the United States and the equivalent in other nations. Staff can choose to opt in or out of that plan. And that's about it for that. And I'm going to turn you over to Reverend Elder Cecilia now.
Thank you, Diane. We had several questions about elders, and there are written answers on the screen in front of you. I think it's worth just taking some time to talk generally about elders and about MCC. Elders have been part of the fabric of MCC since the beginning, and they've served in different capacities over time. So at some points in our history, all the elders were entirely voluntary, and then some were paid and others were voluntary. At some point, in order to be an elder, you were also a member of staff, and now we have the time where we have volunteer elders. At the moment, we have one elder who's also serving on staff, and the role of and we have the Council of Elders. And the Council of Elders currently is in the bylaws, as you will see, is appointed by the moderator, approved and affirmed by the governing board, and then the General Conference. We have our elders working together as the spiritual leadership of the denomination. I'm very appreciative of the support and guidance that the current council elders have given me since I came into post. And the term for the current council of elders will finish at the end of 2020. So the big question here is, do we need elders? And that is really a discussion for us as the whole of MCC. Is for all of our structures, are they still needed? Are they still relevant? What do we want to call them? And that is a discernment process that we can go through together as a body. And as I said earlier, as we're looking to see what God is calling us to do and to be, then this is certainly a question that we can explore. I personally think that having elders is great. I think it's one of the unique things about MCC, and I very much value the elders that have served and are now retired, and our current elders, because there is a body of wisdom there, there's a body of experience there, and people look to our elders to see for guidance and for pastoral leadership. And the point elder system that we have at the moment, although we're continuing to look at how we might improve it and work more closely with the networks and the network leaders, I think it's a good example of how our elders can work together. The recent prayers that were sent out as we experienced disasters around the world also give another example of what our elders can do. So, do we need elders is one question. Here we have a whole series of questions about what will happen going forward. And again, the whole process for the appointment of elders is a discernment process. We listen carefully to the voice of the Holy Spirit in all of this. Just as you can see, hopefully, that the governing board is a diverse board and reflects our diversity around the world. Reverend Paul Whiting is a British person who is serving in the United States. You can see the diversity on the governing board. James has talked about the diversity that we want to have on staff. We want to have a diverse governing board, diverse council of elders, but that also requires people to nominate a diverse slate for me as the moderator to consider. So I encourage all of you to start praying about those people that you think could be called to serve as an elder, because you have people that you know, that you admire and respect. So please just continue that prayer discussion with God about who might be called to serve as an elder. So the process is that during this year we will start that discernment. We will give out information about how you can nominate people. And we will work through and listen to the voice of God in hearing who might be best called to next serve. And we certainly want that to be a diverse group of people. We certainly want it to reflect our denomination. I'm open to the possibility of some of the current elders remaining on the Council of Elders. They have all served 6 years, and they've served at a time of great change and transition, sometimes of great difficulty. And I know for many of the elders, they are content to step down because they feel as though they have served well and faithfully, which they have. And it may be time for a whole new Council of Elders. But we can explore that and see what God has to say about that. Is it possible to appoint more elders? Yes, it certainly is, but the current number of 9 is quite a group of people to work with. If you imagine all of us being on calls like this, where we are working together online and listening from different time zones in different cultures and countries. We want the Council of Elders to be diverse. We also want it to be workable. And there is a limit to the number of people that you can work with successfully when you mainly work online. So again, it's about what is practical and in doing the work the way we do now, in the ministry the way we do it now. Can we appoint elders to geographical areas? Certainly what we're doing around appoint elders is looking at elders being responsible for a group of churches linked with the networks, so that it feels more like there is an elder who perhaps has specialist interest in a particular area of the world, actually going to a system where we appoint specifically from different areas in the world. Again, it's, do we have people who are best called to be elders from there? The wisdom of people is what we're after. The spiritual maturity is what we're after. And within that, we want a good geographic spread. So this is something that, of course, I will want to look at. I'm very committed to having our global identity expressed in the different leadership bodies that we have. I'm very committed to us having diverse opinions, diverse theologies on the Council of Elders to represent the body of MCC. Is it possible to appoint the same number of lay elders as there are clergy elders? It is certainly possible. Whether we want that written into our bylaws is something, again, to consider. I personally, again, think it's about the discernment of the Holy Spirit. There are incredibly wise and gifted and experienced lay people in our denomination. And I would sincerely want us to have far more lay elders than we currently have. Again, that's about recognizing who it is that is around you in your community. Who do you feel is called to be an elder? Who has the characteristics, the personality, the broad focus to actually take a world view of who we are as MCC? So I would certainly be wanting to increase the number of lay elders that we have. Again, about diversity, of course we want it to be diverse. And the challenge also is that then there is also the possibility that some people will not be represented. You may look at the Council of Elders and say, well, there is no one from my country on the Council of Elders. There is no one from my particular gender identity on the Council of Elders. What I hope that we can all see is that whatever the spread is on the Council of Elders, that they are leaders that you trust, that you admire, that you respect, and that you know that even though your life experience may not be exactly their life experience, they are actively seeking out your voice, actively seeking out your story, to hear it and to express it. You know, I'm a white, middle-aged woman of European descent. And my experience in MCC is very different from many of your experiences. But I'm committed to hearing your stories and reflect them back. If you read my moderator's reflections, you will see the stories that I hear every month as I listen to people around the world. The governing board, the staff, the council of elders are constantly explaining situations to me, explaining cultural differences to me, so that I expand my knowledge of what it means to be MCC around the world. And that's what we want from the Council of Elders. When we looked at the moderator's candidate slate, the moderator nominating committee said these candidates may not be all diverse, but they are different. And part of what we all were very committed to as moderator candidates was hearing the voices around the world. So our Council of Elders should absolutely reflect that, and as a body it should be committed to hearing the voices that aren't immediately in the room. And the current Council of Elders, I think, is very good at that. If you look at the weekly call to prayer, that's one way of hearing different voices around the world, and the Council of Elders choose those people that will offer those prayers every week. So there's always work we can do to make things more diverse, to make more voices known, more stories understood. But certainly we can do more in the Council of Elders over this next year. And it's also that just reminding everybody, it's all set out in the bylaws, how elders get onto the Council of Elders. And just as this first Council of Elders, it went through a nomination process, that would definitely be the situation this time. So again, pray about who you think might be called. Talk to them if you think they are an appropriate person. Once the process comes out, engage in the process and continue to hold the current Council of Elders in prayer as they continue their journey. I am asking them questions on our Council of Elders meetings like, what does it mean to be a spiritual leader? What do you as a Council of Elders feel that you want to do in this final 12 months? What are the prophetic messages that you want to offer the denomination at this time? What are the key justice issues that we want to be addressing as the Council of Elders? And again, you will have seen some of those about gun violence, about MCC being a sanctuary denomination, a place where all feel welcome. So I think the current Council of Elders have been doing a fantastic job. They're passionate about their ministry. It's wonderful to hear how they're connecting with local churches and leaders around the world, and that's what we should be building on and working to continue to develop and grow. I think that is all the questions about the Council of Elders, and I'll now hand on to the next question, which Diane is going to answer.
We received this question late in the day today, and it's a question that came from Brazil, asking if they could meet with the governing board on a twice a year or 3 times a year as emerging churches to get our experience and see what it was like. If you remember at conference, there was some confusion about who had paid, who hadn't, or were they supposed to, or weren't they? Had we received their forms? And so in this case, there's some things with the emerging churches that MCC staff are responsible for. And those include things like looking at the forms, the monthly report forms. And hopefully the churches in the emerging churches will get those forms to Reverend Wanda Floyd so that she can work with them around the things that are contained in there. Other staff might be more more appropriate than the governing board to respond to the assessment questions or the programming questions. Those might go to Reverend Karma or Marina. The governing board is predominantly an administrative board, and we serve the denominations, the global denominations' administrative needs. This does not mean that we can't meet with people who request us to meet with emerging churches. It just means that we need to be particularly sensitive to the fact that some of the things that we don't do is we don't talk about things that are programmatic in nature. That is staff. And now we'll move on to the next question, which is me. So we're going to begin answering the questions on the left. And I'm going to just read the question out and say who's going to be responding to it. If you've asked numerous questions, we're going to go to the next person. We want to ensure that people are getting their questions up and that everybody has a chance. We would ask that you don't answer questions in the question box. And so if you have got a response to it, please put it in the chat box. We'll do our best to get to all the questions, and we will answer as many questions as we can. And we can't answer, we'll make sure that we respond to and put it onto the governing board page. So the first question is, are you in a position to answer this? Has the final decision been made to have the next general conference in Austin, Texas, USA? And Cecilia is going to answer that.
Thank you for your question, Velma. You will have seen on the financial reports from the governing board that we have only just settled the account with the Hilton Hotel from Orlando, and that was because we didn't use up the number of rooms that initially had been booked in the contract. We are still in dialogue with the Austin Hotel because we can't just walk away from the contract. If we walk away from the contract, that will cost us thousands of dollars. So what we're currently doing, first of all, is negotiating with the hotel in Austin to lower the number of rooms that we are expected to take. And so it's really important that whatever we hold in Austin, people stay in the conference hotel, or else we will be in the same position again. So what we're looking at is negotiating with the Austin Conference Hotel to have a smaller room booking there. And Mike Hauser and Lauren Bennett and I are working on what else we might do for General Conference to allow as many people as possible around the world to participate, and to use this next conference as an experiment for the conference following that one. So if you recall, there was a motion to General Conference business meeting to actually have a complete review of what General Conference is, and there was a similar request to have a review, a commission about the business meeting. And both of those commissions would report back to the next General Conference for the following General Conference. So what I and the staff are looking at is how we can experiment with the Austin-based General Conference to involve as many people around the world as possible, and how we might do that using technology, perhaps using more than one conference site around the world. And so my suggestion is that you stay tuned and that you join with us as seeing this as an experiment and being willing to try something new and different. Because there are so many things that we can do, and we need to change how we do General Conference. So it's still a work in progress, and when we have information, we'll certainly share it with you.
The next question is, there's some confusion about who elders are currently. Is there a current listing on the website? And Marie was going to answer that.
Hi. I dropped the link in the chat box earlier that gives the bios of the current Council of Elders. I think, too, there may be some confusion, and I'm dropping it in again since it's a while ago. I think there may also be some confusion. I saw some of the questions about whether a person retains that title for always. And so there is a difference between people who are elders and people who are serving on the Council of Elders. And the people who are serving on the Council of Elders are listed at that link that I just dropped in the chat box. They have both photos and bios on the website there. Hope that helps.
The next question was one that has been having quite a lot of discussion in the chat box. It was in connection to point elders. If the elder assigned to a pastor can be changed if they are not doing their job. And so maybe, Cecilia, could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, certainly. The elder who is responsible for the point elders allocation is Elder Nancy Maxwell, and you can contact her at any time to actually talk about who the point elder for you might be. One of the things that we are discussing as a Council of Elders is what does it mean to be a point elder, because again, apart from Reverend Elder Hector Gutierrez, who is on staff, all the other elders are volunteers, and Hector has his own workload as MCC staff, and so the work they do as point elders is on top of whatever else they do in the day. So they, many of them are full-time pastors and have other areas of work and ministry. So what we're wanting to get to is what is a basic expectation of a point elder, and what again on the website you can actually see what the specific role of a point elder is. And the idea is that churches and church leaders are proactive in contacting their point elder. So some point elders also have a way of contacting the churches and church leaders they're responsible for, but the basic premise of the point elder is that if you reach out to your point elder will be happy to assist you, but it's not that the point elder is necessarily always going to initiate contact. So just remember that. So your point elder is there for you. The list of who your point elders are is on the website under Council of Elders, and it's a two-way conversation. So please be proactive in contacting your elder. One of the most impressive things I saw in terms of the point elders, the staff, and the network leaders working together was when there was the possibility of the hurricane hitting Florida in the USA, and point elders were contacting their churches and church leaders. The network leaders, network coordinators were making sure that we were hearing from everybody, and the staff were coordinating that response. So all of that goes to show when we're all working together, just as James said, we have everything we need and we can do really well. So the point elders are part of that. Contact them if you want to have a different elder that you feel would understand your story better, or you already have a relationship with. Contact Elder Nancy and talk that through with her. And again, just bear in mind that all the elders have their own workload, so we try and spread out the number of churches and church leaders among the elders so that they all have an equal share of being a point elder.
The next question is says, would it be beneficial to assign an elder to various areas of the world where a person has a better understanding of the area and report to the moderator? These would be territorial elders. I can say just before, okay, I was just going to say it would require us to change our bylaws somewhat. Cecilia?
Yeah, this is, again, something that the current Council of Elders is discussing. Reverend Elder Hector Gutierrez is passionate about the networks. I have to say, I am sure that he has Go Networks written on a t-shirt underneath everything else that he wears, because it just is one of his great passions. And so he's been working very closely with the Council of Elders to see how networks and the Council of Elders working as point elders can work more effectively and efficiently together, and also how network leaders and point elders can work together so that there is there's not too much overlap, and also there isn't a gap where one thinks the other is doing something. So there's going to be more alignment between point elders and geographic areas. I think at the moment we don't need to go as far as calling them territorial elders, but I think there is wisdom in having people who do understand an area, do understand a culture, or have good existing relationships with clergy, church leaders and congregations in a particular area. Thanks, Diane.
That is the end of our questions. I want to also say that the questions that we answered earlier in the call that was all the questions we received. So we received 9 questions from 3 people, and then we had these questions along the side. So all of the questions have been answered. This will be recorded and circulated as you heard earlier. So that's the end of that.
Yeah, we're nearly at the close of this webinar. It's amazing to know that around the world you are taking time out from what else you could be doing, that perhaps you've left work early, you've stayed up late, perhaps you've gathered people in your congregation together so you can hear this all together and to discuss the comments and the issues that you've heard. We really appreciate that. We know that you are passionate about MCC. We know that you are passionate about your ministry. And we know that you are changing lives. You are drawing people closer to God. You're giving them an opportunity perhaps to express their faith fully for the first time or to re-embrace their faith. We know that you are feeding hungry people. People who are physically hungry, people who are spiritually hungry. We know that you are making communities that are safe, that are healthy, that are drawing people into a space where they belong. And all of that is so needed in the world today. We can look at MCC and we can look at all the different things that we can do better. We can look at the things where we need to shift. We can look at the things where perhaps we feel we have a lag. And we are brilliant. We have survived so much. We have done so much. When people outside MCC look at us, they are amazed at how inclusive we are, at how many women are empowered to be in ministry, at how many people of colour, how many trans people, how many people who are gender fluid are welcomed into our congregations, are welcomed into our churches. How lay people are empowered to preach and to serve and to celebrate communion. And we can do better in all of these things, and yet we are also so far ahead of so many other spiritual places. So please let us not forget that. MCC was called into being to show others how it can be done. And you will do that in your communities, in your cities around the world. And as a governing board, as a council of elders, as church, as MCC staff, we're delighted to hear those stories. And we have Reverend Carleen Dara in place now as our internal communication coordinator. She really wants to hear what you are doing, how you are doing it, because, as James said earlier, the MCC staff cannot do it all. You are doing it, and we want to hear about how you do it, what's excellent in what you do, what lights up your heart and your spirit about your MCC ministry, because we can learn so much more from each other around the world. You are experts in what you do, and we want to learn from you. So thank you to each one of you for everything that you do. Thank you for taking the time to be on the call. Thank you again to all my colleague governors. You are a delight to work with, and I love our general governing board meetings, our finance committee meetings. I'm really looking forward to all the things we will achieve through the commissions this year. Thank you to our Council of Elders. I appreciate your wisdom, your honesty. I appreciate the way that you nurture and guide me as I learn what it means to be the moderator. Thank you to our just excellent, highly committed, highly skilled staff. You know, we are blessed as MCC, and God has called us for such a time as this. So please continue in your faithful ministry. Know that you are in my prayers. And as I meet our folk in Australia and from New Zealand over the next few days, I will be reporting back to you on how it is here with the fires and everything that's been going on. There's been an earthquake in near Cuba today. Hector has already been in touch with our churches in Cuba. They're doing okay. Reverend Elder Margarita has been in touch with our churches in Puerto Rico about the situation there. So, you know, all the time things are going on. People are in connection. Point elders are in connection. Staff are in connection. So this is what we want to continue to do. So thank you to everyone. And now we're going to close in prayer in another of our languages in MCC. So thank you to Alberto, who's going to close us in prayer now.
Thank you, Cecilia, and thank you to everybody who participated in this webinar, all the 46 participants and all the people around the world. We really appreciate your time, and we really appreciate the work that you do in our churches. This is our first webinar, and you know we're going to have the next Thursday. So we encourage the all participants who are around the world to be present in that webinar, because you know we try to expand that. So I'm Alberto Nájera, Reverend Alberto Nájera from Virginia. My home church is New Life MCC, but I am originally from Nicaragua. So we know we have a MCC. Our MCC is a global movement. So I'm going to close in prayer from this webinar in Spanish or in Español. So please join me during this time. Dios Padre, Dios Madre, gracias por este tiempo que nos has dado en compartir y en charlar con nuestros hermanos y hermanas. Gracias por cada uno de ellos y por cada uno, por el trabajo que ellos están haciendo. Gracias por nuestra comunidad alrededor del mundo, por los pastores y por nuestros líderes. Gracias por los que estuvieron presentes en este webinar. Gracias por la Junta de Gobierno. Que tu luz nos guíe y que tu amor siempre nos abrace para abrazar con amor a nuestras comunidades y expandir ese amor gratificante y maravilloso que tú quieres que compartamos. Oramos por nuestras comunidades alrededor del mundo y especialmente por nuestras comunidades en Cuba, por el terremoto sucedido hace poco y por el terremoto también en República Dominicana. Sé tú, Padre, presente en sus corazones, sé tú presente para restaurar y aliviar. Quédate con nosotros y que tu Espíritu siempre nos esté guiando e iluminando. En el nombre precioso de tu Hijo Jesucristo oramos. Amén.